Hi guys, today we're going to talk about pastels and I brought up my Neocolor II water soluble pastels. So here I'm working on a little sketch I did of a Mary Casatt painting because she's one of the best pastel artists in our history. So I was looking at some of her paintings and I was inspired by the painting of her playing cards. And I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could turn one of her paintings into a pastel piece in the form of, a quick little study of just the shoulders up and the head with hat. So these are not like your typical pastels, which is why it looks really strange in the beginning. In the early phases of your piece, your work is going to look a little strange. It's going to look like there's a bunch of patches of local color everywhere. But that's the key to working with the Neocolor II pastels by Caran. You're supposed to lay down big patches of color, like my yellows here, my peaches. But eventually I'm going to introduce some like military greens, some sky blues, some tans, some yellow ochres, pinks, and even a little purple. When you're working with these, like I said, it's not like chalk pastels. The crayon or the pastel feels more like sort of an oil pastel. It's not quite like an oil pastel because if you add water to it, you can move it around. You can do sort of what I did in my watercolor colored pencil demo, where you add water and then you draw with the colored pencils over it to move around that water mixture like a watercolor paint. It's basically what this is. It's also a lot like, of course, a watercolor pencil. So she has blue eyes. I'm starting with a blue base here for her eyes. It's still going to look really messy. You don't want too much graphite on there, but you still want to see what you're doing and find your bearings. So I erased a little bit of the graphite pencil work just so I can get some nice color in there and so that it doesn't drag the graphite everywhere. Because then what you're going to get is a lot of muted, like muddy tones, a lot of different grays. If you want that, that's great. I used a little bit of that on the right side of the face because she's eventually going to have like a purplish, bluish, muted, darker color as a shadow, a coarse shadow. But for the most part, you don't want that. You don't want to drag around those grays because if you're coloring this piece like Mary Casatt, or you're inspired by work like that, you want your colors to be saturated and not contaminated. So here I'm using that dark, muted, almost brownish green, which I referred to in the beginning of the video as sort of military green, but even darker. It's like a raw umber with a little more green in it. And here I'm adding some pink to the lips. And this is still, bear in mind, this is still the base coat or the underpainting or the underdrawing for this matter. So I'm still adding in some straight blues and things, and I'm not mixing too much yet. And when I'm mixing, I'm mostly doing it with the white Caran crayon or pencil. And when I'm mixing my darks, I take some darks that are similar in value, maybe one or two apart in the range, and then I use those to blend. And I think that's the best part about these, is the blending. The blending is much, much, much better than your typical colored pencil or Conte crayon or something like that. It compares to chalk pastels, and I am going to use some pastels, some pencil pastels in this piece to add the details, because I wanted to show you that you can combine this medium with other similar media. So now I'm just sort of blending everything in. We're still in the sort of base coat phase. And again, keep in mind that this is going to look still very, very strange in this stage. Just like a bunch of patches of color. But then again, a lot of paintings look like this when you begin, especially oil paintings when you're laying down those strokes of color, those patches of color. So here are those pencils that I mentioned. And these are basically pastel pencils. They feel a lot like little charcoal pencils or contact crayons, but you can sharpen them and they can get really, really fine. So you can put in all those details. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding in a little bit of dark to the eyes to bring out the eyes. And once I start using these, especially on a piece of this scale, everything's really going to pop out, especially the major features of the face, like the eyes, nose, and a little bit, to a lesser extent, the mouth. And that's just, a basic, raw sienna pencil. It's called chocolate, but it's somewhere between like a burnt umber and a raw sienna. And you could even blend with these. You can blend the material that's already down, the Neocolor, with these pencils that are totally different material. I'm adding a couple darks to the ears. And eventually I'm going to layer the face again and again. So I can sort of blend those yellows in, blend the pinks in, flesh tones, the peach colors, some of those blues. I want to add a little more blue to the bottom at the chin. But I have to add these details in first to bring back out those features of the face and those pits and folds. So here I'm adding a little more pink. Still at this point, the character is going to look like sort of like a clown face, or a character that has all sorts of pastel colors painted all over her face. And that's why I'm bringing back the white, so I can blend in those local colors, like that cadmium yellow. And I'm also blending in the hair. That sort of like burnt sienna color. I'm bringing that into the face, and I'm lightening the hair, making it look thinner, because there's a little lock hanging down in the middle of her forehead. And here I'm adding more peach to do a little more blending. And that's what these are all about. And it's much like working with pastels. You're blending and blending and blending and layering. And you could layer many, many times to a certain extent. I layered this piece about 10, 15, 20 times just so that I could move the color around and get the right color, mix on the canvas or the paper, and get the right color to show through. So here I'm just taking a little bit of black, and I'm shading in the clothing. And I want you to pay close attention to how well this tool goes down, or how well this medium goes down onto the paper. Because now, as you can see, it covers the entire paper. You got to press down a little hard, but you're not going to get those little white specks, those grainy lines. The Neocolor II are really, really great at that. And that's why they're such good blending tools. Onto the scarf. Taking that darker green And then I'm going to add a little bit of that sienna color. The other great thing about these is that you can work really, really quickly. And if I were to turn this into a painting, I'll just add a little water. And I can move the paint around. And cover any little imperfections and things. So painting the brim of the hat, now I'm painting the ribbon. I'm using the same color so it matches her scarf. But I'm going to go back into the scarf and, cut into there and add more details, make it look a little more sculptural. What I'm doing here is I'm using that same color, but I'm only applying a little bit, and then I'm blending it with the white Neocolor so that it looks a little more tan. And this saves time because I'm using the exact same crayon or pencil, but I'm just using it lightly and blending it with white. So just a couple more little shapes need to be added into the hat. We could leave that and let that be for a while. Now I'm moving on to the scarf. I'm just blending the sides of the scarf into her black outfit. And then I'm sort of cutting in to bring out the ribbon shapes up at the top with my black pencil, which is the same value as the background or, the outfit, the dress of the subject. And now I'm taking that darker green. I'm just blending everything in. And everything's mixing now. The black is mixing with the dark green and that burnt sienna color. And then if I want to change up the edges and cut into the edges and get rid of that scarf, then I could just bring that black right back in. That's the best part about these tools, because that's a little tricky to do with other mediums. Other mediums will blend into the black, that'll make it look a little muddy, but the black covers really nicely, just like any other color. It's almost like you're starting over every time when you add more color, depending on the pressure of your stroke or your mark making. And I don't want to add too much more value to the face, because the painting this piece is inspired by was more like a Manet. But I added a little more of this chocolate to the face, and that's about it.